Because, I know what it's like to be targeted for, quote, anti-Semitism.
Oh, yeah.
They make it up and they just fire it at you.
Piss off, David. You have referred to the protocols of the Elders of Zion as evidence in your own books, going as far back as 1994. You have traded in anti-Semitic canards. You have painted targets on innocent Jewish people's backs by saying things about them being a cover for the cabal of the cult that run the world, and making allegations about powerful Jewish people being in the cult. You have done all sorts of despicable anti-Semitic things. It's not made up. You're not being unfairly targeted. You're a dipshit.
Often as they can, to the point where people believe it. And I've
Guilty
been
of that, I guess.
targeted by the Zionist mafia since the mid-1990s. That's when it started.
Yep, because that's when you started.
I'm currently banned from nearly 30 European countries and Australia.
And Australia, not welcome
here. For the
here.
same fake reason.
Okay.
And what they do is they use anti-Semitism, which is a misnomer because the Semites are the Arabic people.
Piss off. This is exactly the shit that I'm talking about. You can't be like, oh, I'm not anti-Semitic because I'm actually... The Jews aren't Semites, so how could I possibly be anti-Semitic? Just... The difference with that is distinction. Don't be a dipshit. You can't weasel word your way out of it.
They use
sorry to cut you off again. As if that changes any of the nature of what you're saying. It's like, oh, it's not actually anti-Semitic, but it's still horrendously discriminatory against Jews. But it's not anti-Semitic because they're not actually Semites, so that takes the curse off it. It's like a Monty Python sketch or something. It's ridiculous.
Anti-Semitism as a weapon to discredit and silence those who are pointing out things that the Israeli government and military and
how many books
intelligence operations like Mossad don't want people to hear, don't want people to know. And so I was the least surprised person in the world this week when Donald Trump, owned by Israel, announced that he was going to target anti-Semitism in the United States. But before I get to that story, this is Trump, the free speech hero, talking at his inauguration.
After years and years of illegal and unconstitutional federal efforts to restrict free expression, I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents, something I know something about. We will not allow that to happen. It will not happen again. Under my leadership, we will restore fair, equal, and impartial justice under the constitutional rule of law.
Oh, boy.
Oh, so Trump is the free speech absolutist. Is he really? What happened to the First Amendment of the United States Constitution when Trump announced this. It's a story from the New York Post. Trump ordering review to identify, punish, and deport anti-Semites, including students on visas. Now, who decides who's an anti-Semite and who is simply criticizing the horrors perpetrated by the Israeli government? Oh, well, Trump does, the authorities do. And that's the game. We say we're going to target anti-Semitism, but we decide what that means and who it applies to.
Okay.
President Trump is signing an executive order instructing all federal agencies to identify civil and criminal authorities available to combat anti-Semitism, including finding ways to deport anti-Jewish activists who violate laws. The order requires agency and department leaders to provide the White House with recommendations within 60 days and outlines plans for the Justice Department to investigate pro-Hamas graffiti and intimidation, including on college campuses, according to a document describing the order. It calls for the deportation of resident, quote, aliens, including students with visas who broke laws as part of the anti-Israel protests following the October the 7th, 2023 attacks in Israel, which sparked the invasion of Gaza, the document reviewed by the Post says. Well, maybe people are just sickened by the mass slaughter of civilians, men, women, and children, enormous numbers of children, that has gone on since October the 7th at the hands of the Israeli government and military. Maybe they're just sickened by that. Oh, no, that's anti-Semitic.
That's not anti-Semitic. That's only anti-Semitic if you say that they're doing it because they're Jewish. That's, you can criticize Israel for what's happening in Gaza. Absolutely. Yeah. But, I mean, I feel like David kind of gave the game away there. If not that I'm going to defend Donald Trump, because most of his executive orders, this one included, they don't just become law. He doesn't have that kind of power. Like, executive orders are just, in and of themselves, nothing. Unless they're within the very limited scope of power that the president has, But David's given the game away. If they're on student visas and they're committing crimes, well, then that's probably the basis on which they'll be deported. Rightly or wrongly, whether they're I think they're protesting a genuine injustice, a genuine horror. But if they're there on a visa, well, then that visa has conditions, and that'll be the basis on which Donald Trump deports you, I guess. Rightly or wrongly. But this isn't like a pursuit of ideological enemies or anything like that. And the other thing, it's like pro-Hamas activity. I mean, again, this is a hot topic. It's a hot button issue, and I don't want to say anything because that is going to be ignorant, because frankly, I just don't know enough about it. It's a complicated issue. But the US do consider Hamas a terrorist organization. So anything that's going to be in support of them, of course, the US government is going to be highly critical of. So, I mean, rock and a hard place for those student protesters, I guess. But yeah, oof. But not the cut and dry issue that David wants us to think it is.
And interesting, isn't it?
It is interesting.
Be called an anti-Semite for criticizing and calling out mass slaughter. That's a terrible thing. But if you're cheering on the said Israeli government and military, and you're saying that the mass slaughter of the innocent is just Israel having the right to defend itself, and everything's completely fine, then nothing happens to you. There is no censorship of that. Why? Because you're saying what those in power are happy for you to say.
Yeah, I mean, he's got you there. Yep, he's got me on the ropes.
6 Republican-led House committees issued a report last month, this article says, calling for the federal government to do more to address anti-Semitism, including by conditioning federal aid to colleges to force stricter policies against anti-Jewish bias. And it says, hate speech generally is legal in the United States, but the House
First Amendment
Republican report released last month argues that federal law bars recipients of taxpayer funds from tolerating discrimination, which can be interpreted as having an opinion the authorities don't like, allowing a way to force recipients to stiffen policies. Federal courts have found that non-citizens have fewer free speech rights.
Yeah.
Well, actually, surely everyone in the world, ideally, should have the same free speech rights.
Well, yes,
Trump's attempt to crack down on anti-Semitism, including likely by withholding federal funds, comes on the heels of his orders to temporarily freeze federal aid and the distribution of pending federal grants, the latter of which was poised Tuesday by a federal judge. Absolute madness, that pause. I think it's been withdrawn now, but the impact on the population, many of them that actually supported Trump, has been ridiculous and fundamental to their lives. So, as I said earlier...
That's the other thing too, like, are we meant to be surprised that David's going on about Mr. Free Speech absolutist Trump, big hypocrite? Are we meant to be surprised that Donald Trump is full of shit? Is anyone surprised by that? It's only just occurred to me what he said. And it just went right over my head the first time. But who's surprised that Donald Trump is... Nobody, David. No one's surprised.
This Israel theme has been a theme of the week. And I've been saying over the years, never mind recent weeks, that the idea is to ethnically cleanse Israel, eventually, of Palestinians. And would you believe it? Yes, I would actually, if I'm honest.